Welcome to People Over Politics. I'm Josh Barnett. I'm running for U.S. Congress in District 7 in Arizona. I'm here with my co-host,
Chris Woolwine.
And Tom Hussey.
We got a special guest tonight, and we're going to kind of discuss, wow, there's so much every week. There's so much every week. It's almost like, where do you start? But we can start tonight because Trump had as I had to just got to have another meeting, I was glancing through my Twitter to see what Trump had his conference about. It was about the plasma therapeutic to fight COVID, basically, and he's doing an emergency use type thing on it. He's blaming the FDA for holding things up, which is probably true, because we all know how the FDA operates. So, but that was the newest news, I guess, tonight. But so what'd you want to get started on, Chris? What's going through your head? I see stuff going on.
Well, I watched some of the conference, the news conference. He actually said that the FDA wasn't holding this one up; that they had approved the usage of it, and it went pretty smooth. He had a couple of
well, they did too, hydroxychloroquine. Then they reneged on it later.
Yeah.
So
Well, he had a couple of experts there,
yeah.
I guess doctors, and they were saying that they had good results from it, and so they were saying that was something they're putting into play now. This is going. This is not.
It's working well, and we need to use it.
No, they're saying they're going to use this.
Yeah.
That the FDA has approved it.
Yeah.
It's a therapeutic that they're going to go forward with. And
now, is this supposed to be used as a preventative measure, like early onset type thing, or is this something that can be used if you already have? Wow, I'm going to get intubated. We got to start using this now, or did they say if it was an early onset, like hydroxychloroquine type thing, or?
They didn't say. If they did, I didn't hear that part. Yeah. But they did say this. It was a question by one of the reporters. He asked, well, what about a patient that's say, kind of in a no hope situation? Would they have the option to just say, hey, can I just try this now? Can I just be the first one? And it was interesting because no one up there had that answer. Trump was like, that's a good question. We didn't even think about that, and then he asked the two doctors. They're like, we don't know either, basically, so it was, so it's just so much confusion with the whole thing, but so, we'll see where it goes.
Well, I think that would fall, for me, it would fall into the Right to Try Act.
That's what they were talking. That's what they were asking.
That would fall directly, hydroxychloroquine or that or anything. We know it's not dangerous for you. At least the hydroxychloroquine, we know it's not dangerous, but it's like it makes you wonder, like, why is this not being used everywhere? So, but it is what it is.
I mean, I think the bottom line is when we start talking about therapeutics or vaccines, the three of us here aren't doctors, but I think what the real question is, COVID-19 is here now. It's just not going anywhere. There's probably not going to be a cure. It's like the flu. It's going to hit us every year.
It's going to change and evolve. Yeah.
My question is, or I think what all of our question is how do we move on with real life again, common real life, and how do we learn to live with it? Like, how does it become part of our everyday world, and how can we move back to something that resembles more of normalcy? That's my concern. I let the doctors argue what they want to argue about what works and what doesn't, and if they come up with a cure, fantastic. But in the meanwhile, the rest of us have to get back to normal life.
You don't want to wait an hour and a half in Vegas to eat at Denny's.
Hour and a half to eat at Vegas. And
we
have to sit in our car. That's the thing, is you don't get to sit in the waiting room. You go and sit in your car,
Lord.
and then they text you when it's ready to go.
This is just bad. All around. That's just all around bad.
Well, I had a bad experience this weekend with basketball tournaments.
Well, I thought it was interesting when I went to Vegas. I guess we thought Arizona was bad. When I went to Vegas, they're on another level.
That's a true fact.
Isn't it?
They're on a true fact.
Like, you're living. I felt like everything's nanotech.
Are people really scared, or is it just the governor mandating?
Oh,
nonsense?
I don't know, because there's no choice in it. Like, even when you're walking through the casino, there'll be like security guards saying, "Hey, pull your mask up, pull that up, put your mask on." Yeah. Like literally.
Because I'll go to Walmart and I don't wear my mask, and I walk in and the security guards, nobody says anything to you. You just walk around, you do your thing.
Yeah.
In Vegas, they're not going to let you in to Walmart. Like, they're stopping people from going in there unless you have your mask on. Every lobby that I went to, every casino we visited, there is a zero tolerance. Like, you will wear your mask. I had my mask crazy. Like right below my nose, and that wasn't even
so
like
it.
Yes, it had to be and they're they're nuts with
They
it.
know you get it through your eye, right? That's probably the most, like, you're going to wear goggles everywhere, like Fauci said. You know, it's funny. They're so worried about that, but they let a guy go up to Mandalay Bay with tons of guns and stuff and didn't
Shoot
catch
up
that. You know
everybody
what I mean? Yeah. But no, it's crazy, man. Yeah, because your eyes are the most porous for a virus, you know, if you wanted to compare orifices, you know. So.
And I was telling Chris before the show, I mean, it's gotten so extreme that, like I said, my kid went out there for a basketball tournament, and you have, you know, a bunch of people showing up, and they have rules now where it's 10 players can be in the facility with 2 coaches. Parents can no longer watch their kids play basketball. We all had to sit in our car while our kids played basketball and waited for the outcome, and my kid would come out after
They can't even put it on a YouTube channel for you?
They were live streaming it, but they were charging us to watch the live stream. And I mean, if you're sitting in your car, yeah.
That blows the level of stupid.
You know, and you pay for these tournaments. You pay tournament fees. You pay your club dues.
It's expensive.
And you pay for hotel, lodging, travel, all the good stuff that comes with traveling to another place for a tournament. To sit in your car and wait for your kid to get done.
For something that's 0.02% fatality for people under 70. The flu's 0.1.
So
it's insane.
Like I said, that was my experience in Las Vegas
my goodness.
this weekend. So
here I was like, oh, what happened? Did you have a good time? Yeah. He's like, well, actually, no.
and from what I understand, and the people, because when I was in Vegas, I was telling the people there that I knew, like, man, you guys are way more strict than Arizona. What they were telling me is California is like that, is worse than Vegas.
Yeah.
I have not been to California.
Yeah, they were telling me, they said, man, you go to Cali, like, it's worse.
That,
You know, they still haven't even opened up salons. You know what I mean? Like, from
people looking ugly there. They got to cover up, man.
Oh, man.
They got no salons open. They're all looking. They just cover it up.
Yeah, like Joe Rogan left. He's moving his show to Texas.
He needs to move to Phoenix. What the hell, man? Moving to Texas.
You know,
I got an opportunity zone for him.
It hits me personally, and I know it hits Chris, because we've talked about this a lot of times about, you know, what it means for our kids to play sports and us to watch our kids play. And, you know, when that's taken away from you, now we're talking about losing something on a whole different level. I mean, we only get one opportunity to raise our kids and watch them play.
Yeah.
And when that's gone, or a whole season's trashed, that's an opportunity not only our kids lose, but that's an opportunity for me to do the thing I like to do the most, which is watch my kid.
It pisses me off. It really does.
You know,
I can't imagine. I can't imagine growing up and not being able to play baseball or basketball or something. It really, honestly, pisses me off because when you know the stats and you know the data and you know the numbers and the reaction that they're implementing, it doesn't make sense. And then to see, you know, especially like those guys, the high school seniors, the college seniors. You know, they're saying, "Oh, well, let them come back." Who the hell wants to come? Honestly, I want to get out of school. I don't want to stay here another year. But you have the option. But in high school, you don't. They're just like, you're done. And you're like, I just lost. If I would have lost my senior year of high school, I would have never went to state championship.
Right.
I would have never won a regional. Never. No. You know what I mean? Like I had a great time in high school. You know, as far as sports and stuff, we had some great teams.
And, you know, and the counter argument to all this of what we're saying about watching our kids play is, oh, well, you don't care about people that are dying, and you don't care about the old people, and
you say that about anything.
I know, and that's the thing, is you can say that about anything. And I know maybe it sounds selfish that I want to watch my kids play, but I just think about all the opportunities going forward if this continues the way it is.
Yes.
If it's a temporary thing, we can all move past it. But if this rolls into 2021, I mean,
it will.
Really
if Joe Biden is president,
it
will.
Yeah,
He's going to put a mandate on a mask that I will never follow, and he can. I won't even say it on here what he can do, but it's not going to happen. I'll tell you right now, the people I know, we're not going to comply with that BS. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, because you can't show me data. If you're over 70, stay home then. You know, if you're sick or compromised, stay home.
And I
but
think
you know,
you're right. That's the thing, is if you are afraid, or if you are compromised, or you are older, you have the right to protect yourself and stay home. Nobody's arguing with you.
And if you wear a mask, you shouldn't care if I wear one, because if you're protected by your mask, right, because it works, you shouldn't care if anybody else wears one. You have a mask on. So the whole argument of everybody has to wear a mask is so weak and just dumb. It's just no common sense behind it.
And like I said, in staying with the kid thing, because like I said, that's my biggest
frustrating.
personal
Yeah,
issue.
that frustrates me.
Is that online schooling too? Because I not only do my kids go to school online, but I teach online. You know, and
I know.
I see that, you know, I'm giving 15-minute classes now as opposed to hour classes.
When do you guys start back? Are you doing it in person anytime? Or?
They're still planning on a September 8th return.
See, Bentley starts Monday. He starts tomorrow in person.
September
But guess what?
8th return is
he gets to
for
wear a mask
us.
all freaking day.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want my kid wearing a mask all day.
Yeah.
Well, but check this. My daughter, started Thursday.
Yeah.
In Florida, right?
Uh-huh.
You have to wear a mask. You have to wear a mask in your class all day? Because I don't want her doing that, you know? And she's like, well, no, we sit at our desk, we don't have to wear it. And I'm like, okay, well, they had to...
Right?
I was like
That
getting a headache
None of it makes any sense. I know.
Like,
where you're
we're
going.
socially distanced in
Yeah.
the class, and the desk is spread apart, so we're socially distanced. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like...
I know.
I'm getting a
You're
headache.
living in backwards world. I know
so,
how you feel.
And I'm like, well, at least they're letting him sit there without
Like,
a mask on, you know?
Uh-huh.
Check this. So my client, Courtney, her daughter goes to school goes to school in the classroom at the desk, right?
Mm-hmm.
With an iPad. All the kids are at their desks with their iPads. Teacher's at home or wherever she is, with an assistant, the class
the
assistant
TA, yeah.
in the classroom,
Yeah.
teaching them, but the teacher's teaching them on an iPad.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is going on?
It's
Why isn't
bizarre
that teacher's ass in the classroom?
Yeah.
The assistant's in there. Why isn't she in there? And why are the kids learning on an iPad when the teacher can be there in person? It's ridiculous.
I know that some of at the school district that I'm at, I know some of the kids that have learning disabilities or in the SPED program
Oh.
are actually on campus.
Yeah.
But the teachers aren't
Yeah.
there, but the paraprofessionals are. So I know that situation.
It's
you're right,
It's
like,
illogical.
Where's
you
the
know?
teacher at? You know
It's
what I
so
mean?
irrational, and like, and we can get into teacher unions and what I feel about them, but I almost to the point now I'm so fed up with the teacher unions that I think we should just disband them. I mean, like
Defund everything.
yeah, I mean they if you don't want to work, you should be fired and replaced by somebody who wants to work. And I see these teachers, like, oh, I don't want to go. Well, you're fired. I'll find somebody else to teach, and I'd rather pay this assistant that's here in person, busting her butt, or to try, to help these kids. And you know what I mean? It's very frustrating to see people who, whether nurses or anybody that's considered quote essential, they're all working. Grocery store clerks are putting food out on the shelves, but a teacher can't go to work with the same students every day. It's not like you could cut down the interaction in a school, by doing certain things. You can definitely cut that interaction down. But knowing the number, again, if the teacher's over 70, I get it.
Yeah.
If the teacher's compromised, I get it. But most of them aren't, so.
Well, Josh, the reality is, and I'll tell you now, every teacher probably will disagree with me and say that I'm a liar, but I will tell you right now that part of the reason, if not most of the reason, of why they don't want to go back to school is because teaching online is easier.
Yeah.
If you total up 6 blocks a day at 15 to 20 minutes a clip, what are we talking about? An hour and 15, hour and a half of total teaching time? And you're getting paid full teacher pay. But you're claiming, well, I'm not comfortable going back to school because I might get sick or my health.
You might get the flu too, but that's all right.
I'm telling you right now, Josh, it is easier to teach online because, like I said, you're given 15 minutes, 20-minute short lectures. You throw your PowerPoint on Canvas, which is the teaching tool they use.
Uh-huh.
They read the PowerPoint. If you have a homework, it's all online. It's just like online college, but
Yeah.
it's easy. And I'm telling you, that's one of the main driving reasons why these teachers don't want to go back, because they want the same pay, and it's easier.
See, that's what frustrates me. Is they were all,
That's a terrible thing to say, but it's the truth.
I agreed, even though I know Red for Ed is the socialist movement paid for George Soros, paid by him. I did agree that teachers need to be paid more out here, right? I think everybody did.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
Nobody
Conservatives,
argues with that.
I don't.
That's a universal.
They increased it 20%. I thought it should be even higher, to be honest with
Absolutely.
you. So the Red for Ed, it was more than just that, right? I mean, we all kind of know that now. But with that being said, these same teachers, the teacher unions, not some of the teachers. A lot of teachers want to go back. I know, like, want to get back in the classroom, but the teacher unions are pushing for all this other nonsense on top of it, and the poison pilling it, we were just talking about, kind of poison pilling what can be done. But they want the extra money, which they got, and they're getting paid a little more. They I feel if they're in a class deserve more. But these same teachers that were complaining about not having money now don't want to go to work.
Yeah.
And it's like where I understand the value of a union. I understand why they started. I understand. I've done my history on it.
And they played their part in history, no doubt.
But with that being said, unions in 2020 are a lot different than what unions used to be when they first started for reasons.
Yeah.
The reasons why.
For sure.
And now it seems like where there's unions involved, there's there's a lot of corruption, a lot of corruption involved, but also you see what's happening right now. They're not doing what's best for the student. They're doing not even what's best for the teacher. I don't think.
I don't think.
But they're pushing an agenda, an ideology behind it, and not what's best for the school, what's best for the community, what's best for the teacher, or the student, more or less.
Unions have lost their way. They've just become political arms of,
Yeah, money always corrupts most things, and this is definitely another example of that.
Yeah.
Coming through.
Well, speaking of union, Tom, the reason we kind of switched gears, we wanted you here is because I know we have a background in law enforcement, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding law enforcement nowadays, and I just kind of want to get your take, kind of give people like what you did in law enforcement, how you got involved, and where you stand now.
When I was younger, I joined the United States Coast Guard, and I was trained as a bosun's mate, but wasn't really much on driving boats. So they had an opportunity for military police, and from that point on, for the next 15 years, I spent the majority of my time in the Coast Guard in a law enforcement capacity. First on the island of Kodiak, so for 7-8 years, I was just your standard, typical, beat cop driving around a patrol car, responding to calls, traffic stuff, And then when my very last station, about 4 years up in Lake Tahoe, and I was a water cop. So I would just drive around to Lake Tahoe during the summers, and we would do boardings and respond to emergencies or any type of law enforcement action, and just a water cop.
So I know you and I have spoken, several times about police and the levels of aggression that you've seen. Kind of give us your take on that. Well,
when I got into law enforcement, I was young. I was probably 24 years old, and as a 24-year-old, you're a little crazy. You're a little aggressive. I mean, you're in the military, and by nature, that kind of draws those people anyway. And at first, I'd go out after I was qualified, and I'd go out and I'd get a call, and I'd go, and I didn't have the tools to really be able to manage the situation. So I found myself getting into a lot of overly aggressive situations where, I would have to put hands on, take them to the ground, and it's always aggressive. And, for the first couple weeks, that's really awesome because you get to go out and you get to beat some people up, and it's cool, and you're 24 and you think you're a badass and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But after a while, that really starts to get tiring. And then you also see, you start questioning yourself, did I really need to beat that guy up? Could I have gotten out of that without...
Is there another option?
Yeah, could I have gotten out of that without having to put him in a headlock or something? I'm sure there is. Yeah. And I learned this thing. It was a training video called Verbal Judo. And it was a training on how to de-escalate a situation by talking, by using certain talking patterns and saying certain things that could bring the situation to a more peaceful resolution. And once I mastered that, my whole police career changed. I mean, I can count the amount of physical altercations I got in after that on my hands.
So it's training. Like we always talk about, training can be the one thing, probably the biggest change.
And once you learn how to talk to somebody, even remember when you're a cop and you show up to somebody's call, you're dealing with somebody who could possibly be having the worst day of their life.
Yeah, true.
The worst day of their life. Not just a regular day, but the worst day of their life.
Drunk on top of it.
And there's a lot of other things that fuel that fire.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, you have to understand that you just can't interact with them as you would somebody in Walmart or wherever you're at. Yeah. And that really changed my career when I learned how to see people not as necessarily perpetrators or guilty people, but as just a human being.
Yeah.
And then I actually got a lot of compliance out of these people that were, eventually charged with a crime or not, charged with a crime or were going to be arrested. Because some people, you show up, they're going to be arrested. That's just, it's going to lead to that.
Yeah.
But it's how you get them in handcuffs, and are they going to go willing? Are they going to be compliant? Because that also serves them later, because when they go before the judge, I can say, hey, this guy was mad when I got there, but when we left, he was cool as a cucumber. You know what I mean? He was chilling.
Realize he did something wrong.
It goes a long way with the judge. He appreciates what you've done for him, even though he doesn't realize it at the time. But afterwards, he's like, that cop was pretty cool. Yeah. And then also as a cop, sometimes you have to understand you have a lot of discretion of which laws you can enforce.
Yeah.
You know, there's your obvious ones that
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing you can do about, but there are some ones where you have more discretion of, well, do I really want to jack up this guy right now? Or is he just making a mistake? Is this just something stupid he's doing?
Yeah.
Can he live the rest of his life and forget this moment and be just fine?
Yeah.
And you sometimes have to make those decisions,
Yeah.
and I got really good at that too. And I would like to see a lot more police officers use that moral judgment when they deal with you know, suspects or perpetrators or, you know, whoever they're
When
dealing
you
with.
talk with somebody and you can tell that they're genuinely sorry about whatever situation it is, and it's
Yeah.
you know, and you're like kind of like almost like you learn your lesson. You kind of get the feeling this will never happen again with this person.
Yeah.
Instead of somebody's trying to argue or fight you about it,
Yeah.
you know, then you're kind of like, well, you're just going to do this again.
Because nobody wants to see the cops on. And I'll tell you, I don't know if we got time for a story, but I'll tell you a story about what I mean when I say use discretion on when you should jack somebody up and when you shouldn't. So I was out on this old country road headed out to this ski chalet we had in Kodiak, and these guys come blazing by me in this little pickup truck, a little Toyota. I mean, they're going entirely too fast. But I mean, out there's nobody around. I mean, you drive as fast as you want. So I drive up behind them, pull them over, and I walk up on their window. Now, that's the scariest moment in a police officer's life is when you pull somebody over and you walk up to their front window, because at this point you have no idea what to expect. You don't know if they're going to be cool. You don't know if they're going to be not cool. You don't know if it's going to be a little old lady. You don't know if it's going to be a 300-pound man ready to, you know, tear your head off.
Yeah.
You don't know. It's scary. And any cop who tells you they're not afraid is lying to your face. Okay, it gets you. Now you learn to manage it over time. But so I walk up on this car, and there's these two fellas in there, license and registration. You know, and I run both of them, and the driver wanted on a warrant, and the passenger was a recent parolee. Now they had firearms. Both of them had firearms underneath their seat. They had pistols. Now in Alaska, that's not incredibly uncommon, but you guys know the rules with felons and parolees. You're not supposed to have, you know, guns on you.
Yeah.
So I thought, and they were both being very nice to me. They weren't catching attitude. I mean, they knew their goose was cooked.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself when I was in the car, and I was like, you know what? A lot of times the reason cops get shot is because somebody doesn't want to go back to prison. And when you're in the police academy, you watch countless encounters of cops getting shot, and you hear the reasons why. And a lot of it is because I just don't want to go back to jail. I just don't want to go, no matter what. They just don't want to go back to jail. And so a cop gets shot in the face when he walks up on a traffic stop. And that's how you find most people that have warrants or are breaking patrol is traffic stops.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, you know, I'm really glad I didn't get shot in the face. So I walked back up there and I said, listen, this is what I'm going to do for you guys. I was like, I know that you're on parole, so this is what I'm going to do. You have somebody come pick you up right now. He's like, yeah, I can make a call right now. Okay, cool. I was like, you take the guns with you and whoever's picking you up, and you guys get out of here, and I'm going to forget I ever saw you again. Now, the guy with the warrant, there's nothing I can do for him. He's got, I mean, he knows, you got to turn him in. So before the state troopers come, because that's who I would usually call to have them locked up, I said, you get out of here, disappear, and you never existed on this. I said, buddy, I'll hook up your friend. I'll get the guns out of here because you don't want to be on a warrant with a gun either.
Right.
And that's how we'll play it. And I said, what do you guys think about that? And, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm saving one of them, but that's the kind of thing that it goes a long way, because maybe that next guy, maybe the next interaction that guy has with a cop, if I would have jacked him up, maybe it would have gone through his mind like, well, the last cop that pulled me over and I had a gun, he sent me right back to the can, and I'm pissed off about this. So guess what? I'm not going back to jail today. So he's getting popped.
He's reaching for that gun. Man.
You know, and sometimes that's the kind of discretion you got to make when you're a cop. And I would like to see more cops do that rather than just become policy enforcer or revenue agents or stuff like that.
Yeah, I was just looking up. Trump put out his second term. Things that he wants to achieve in a second term, and one of the section of defund or defend our police, fully fund and hire more police and law enforcement officers, increase criminal penalties for assaults on law enforcement officers, prosecute drive-by shootings as acts of domestic terrorism, bring violent extremist groups like Antifa to justice, end cashless bail, and keep dangerous criminals locked up until trial. That just makes sense on that one. New York's been a disaster since that, but those are all things that he listed out just today for his second term agenda.
Now, you know what I would like to see him also do, though? Is give some concessions to the other side, too.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, so, I mean, me and Chris have actually talked about it. No-knock raids,
Yeah.
Stuff like that. No-knock raids and over-militarization of the police department and stuff like that. I think he can give some concessions.
I agree with you. And I've heard, I don't know if it's him necessarily, but I've heard the argument of, well, we had all this stuff just sitting in storage. Was it him? I thought I heard, I couldn't remember if it was, sitting in storage, so we're just going to give it out because it's just sitting here. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. I don't know. There's no need for it, as far as I'm concerned, and that doesn't need to happen. And the no-knock raids, I understand why they try to do it, catch them by surprise type of thing, right?
Save evidence. That's the primary reason.
Yeah, but it's not necessary. Like for example, and I know the whole situation, the Breonna Taylor situation, right? Okay, she knew she was dating a drug dealer. She knew she was in a trap house. She knew all that stuff, but she got caught in that crossfire, between her and the drug dealer. Her boyfriend.
Well, my argument to that is that, okay, so it was the cops that broke in this time and accidentally shot her, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not all uncommon for drug dealers to be robbed by their competitors. Yeah. So it could just as well be some competitors that ran in and sprayed the place with bullets so they could steal his money.
That's exactly what the argument I was going to make.
That's the counter argument.
That's exactly the argument I was going to make. He didn't know. Now, if you make it known, if you do it, you're going on a warrant and you're police open up.
Yeah, but anybody can say that.
You're like giving him out.
That's what I would say if I was going to rob my competitor. Yeah.
If he's a good drug dealer, have a camera outside looking. But you know what I mean? At least you give that opportunity to make the right decision, hopefully, right? So she doesn't get shot in the head or something bad happens, you know what I mean? But people are saying, all this stuff, but people got to take some accountability for themselves too and personal responsibility because she knew she put herself in a bad situation. Yeah. Potentially someday you're going to be put in a bad situation. And, it's frustrating because you don't want to see that happen to anybody.
You don't want to say she had it coming.
No, not at all.
But could she have avoided the situation by taking personal responsibility?
Yes, if you would have said I'm dating a drug dealer, I'm in a trap house all the time or hanging out with everybody. The cops could come here and that something could happen, But even regardless of that, I don't like the no-knock. I feel there's too much bloodshed with those, and from the research I've done on it, that there is too many people getting shot on these no-knock warrants for just what you pointed out. Mm-hmm. The drug dealer don't know. They don't know it's the cops, trying to come in and do their job. Basically, you don't know if it's a rival gang or somebody coming in there or trying to rob you.
Well, the two parts about the situation that bothered me the most, honestly, were first of all, not only was it no knock, they were in plain clothes.
Yeah. I agree that we don't have all the information either, so where you're going with this.
Plain clothes is a big thing.
They were in plain clothes, right? So now you have Tom Hussey kicking my door in plain clothes.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so they kick the door in, right? Once again, you're in plain clothes. They're not saying police.
They don't know who you are.
So he shoots at one of them. Yep. They shoot her and kill her. He gets charged with attempted murder of a police officer, and he's still locked up for that. You see what I'm saying? That's the part that really is sketchy to me.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like, wait a minute. Josh just kicks my door in plain clothes. I shoot at him, and
thinking you're protecting yourself, or your girlfriend,
and then he shoots my girlfriend, and I get charged with attempted murder on a police officer. Yeah. That's there's too much gray area,
and that's why we need to get rid of no-knock. So you don't put the cops number one in that position, and you don't put anybody else in that position.
In there. And I keep telling the girls, quit dating drug dealers and hanging out the trap house. And I don't want anything bad to happen to you. It's like.
And I also think that a lot of people were awoken to this situation, which gives Donald Trump a kind of out for concession because this happened to his buddy, Roger Stone. Yeah. I mean, they show up with 26 armed guys to this man's house. He doesn't even own a gun.
Luckily, Roger didn't show up with an AK and just start shooting. He didn't know.
But
Who knows?
But he did.
But things like that, you can send an indictment to his attorney, and his attorney is going to make sure he's at his arraignment.
Roger
It's
already
as
said
easy-
that. Him and his attorney said, "Let us know. We'll turn ourselves in tomorrow at 9 a.m. or whatever
A
time." you
lot
want."
more of this stuff needs to be handled that way. That's
Yeah.
why we have a legal system.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why
I
we have
agree.
a
I
legal
agree
system.
100%.
Use
those
it.
need to go. They need to get rid of it. That's probably going to be at the state level. So maybe we start here in Arizona and say, listen, we want these gone in Arizona.
Yeah.
Let's start at the state level because I think it is a state level thing. I think every state would be maybe, I don't know if it has to be a federal type thing because it's not federal police going in and doing this stuff. It's usually SWAT, right? Or Phoenix PD
Just
or
local,
SWAT,
yeah.
right? Local
Vice
police,
squads,
local state
yeah,
police.
stuff like that.
So that would have to be handled or a constitutional sheriff saying, we're not doing this anymore here. In my administration, if Jerry Sheridan wins, we're not going to do any part of no-knock warrants in Maricopa County, and he can control that situation.
Yeah.
So, I haven't talked to Jerry about that. I'm going to add, next time I'll see him this week, I'm going to ask him about that.
And the other issue that I had about police reform was that sheriffs are elected by the people.
Yes.
If you don't like the way the sheriff department is managing their business, you can get a new guy,
Yes.
and the department will change based on who you're electing, who the public thinks is appropriate for this job. But city cops they don't have that kind of elected boss,
Yep.
so they're not necessarily answerable to the public.
Yeah.
They can't be held accountable, and I think there needs to be
Just
some kind
directions
of
of the mayor, that's it.
I think there needs to be some kind of civilian oversight of city police departments.
Or let the sheriff be the oversight.
I think we should only have sheriffs.
I do too.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Stephen Shelby and I just talked about this the other night.
There
There shouldn't
the
even be-
Constitution doesn't even allow for anything other than
you're right. There shouldn't even be a quote police department.
Yeah.
It should just be the county sheriff
County
and his
jurisdiction.
deputies, and
Absolutely.
that's what the police department is. Because you're right, it's run by somebody who's elected by the people, and that constitutional sheriff has so much power that he can tell the feds to leave.
And that's the argument of the sovereign citizens.
Yes.
When
Well,
I was
that's a good argument. I mean, it's a legitimate constitutional argument.
when I was up in Tahoe, that was one of the major things that they were warning us federal law enforcement about, is that if you stop somebody and it's a sovereign citizen,
Yeah.
you can expect that they're going to give you hell until you get a sheriff boat out there.
Yeah.
And I thought, and they were demonizing these guys,
Yeah.
and I think to myself about the argument, and I was like, well, they're kind of have a point. They're kind of right. Like
Yeah.
the way that they think is correct.
Yeah.
So I never, luckily, had to run into a sovereign citizen out on the lake like that, but I had a plan for when I did, and my plan was absolutely not to argue, not to enforce anything. But if they requested a sheriff on scene, I would detain them until a sheriff
Yeah.
came, and if a sheriff saw fit for them to go, then that was the way I was going to handle that.
Yeah. No, well,
But,
I think that's probably the
But I
right way
thought
to
that would be the
handle
most
situation.
appropriate way to de-escalate a
Yeah, for
situation.
sure. I
like
agree
that.
with you. No, that argument is a lot of people have been making that argument. They're like, defund the police, and I'm like, okay, fine, defund the police department, give all the money to the sheriff, and then we'll just deputize all these police. Now you work for the sheriff's department as deputy, as deputies for the sheriff, and now the sheriff will control law enforcement within Maricopa County, whatever county you're in. So. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
I don't think we should defund anything. We need to reform maybe some stuff, right? Reform some things. But I'd be perfectly okay if that happened. If
Yeah.
the sheriff took over and basically just absorbed the police department.
And I would also see and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I would like to see police officers be used as more of a reactionary response force than revenue agents. I don't like seeing.
That's the main thing I think people have a problem with.
I don't like seeing law enforcement being used to generate income for the state or the city. I think that's wrong too, and that's
Quotas, hit their quotas.
that's a
Yeah.
bad spot to put a cop in.
And most cops hate that too.
Yeah, they
At
don't-
least the ones I thought, I don't like hit. I got to do this many of this, and you're right. It shouldn't be. It should not be a.
Yeah.
A
And that
revenue
includes
generating.
all law prevention stuff like red light cameras, speed traps on the highway,
Yep.
stuff. Intersection cameras. I don't like that kind of stuff. I think it's a violation of privacy. Number one,
Yep.
even though they're in public spaces, it's Orwelling to me and it's creepy.
Yep.
But obviously, it doesn't prevent crime. It just captures a crime if it's committed, so you can capitalize on the revenue that you're going to find that person.
Yeah.
So,
It's a lot. That's a lot to unpack.
yeah, that's a show. Right.
First things first is it's going to be tough to institute some of those things, even though they make sense because of police unions. We're back to the union thing again. You know,
Just gonna mention that. Yeah.
And the other part about it is that's tough is that okay, this is where politics get in the way of just good common sense, right? Because what you said is concession on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Because of the way things are right now, it's basically what we're doing right now is even rare.
Yeah.
Because I'm an independent. I lean conservative.
Yep.
You're Republican. You're Republican, right?
I'm libertarian.
Libertarian. Okay.
He's a conservatarian.
Yeah. Okay. Either way.
Yeah.
The point being is that it's usually if you're Republican, you're all in on the blue. If you're a Democrat,
Yeah.
it's defund the police.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So even in the sense of what Trump said, it's hard to give concessions because people are so stonewalled on one side or the other of the situation.
Compromise is a bad word.
Exactly.
It's a bad
And
word.
so it's like this, right? Because when you read that, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, that's good, but if a police officer assaults a citizen too, and what are we going to do with that? Because that goes on all the time too.
They need to be reprimanded.
Probably
drastically.
more. You know what I mean? Just like you said, in your early days, it was, I'm gonna rough a guy up, and just think about how much that goes on, and that's not a color thing. Just think how much that goes on across America every single day with young cops thrown out there on the beat, rough some guy up because of lack of training, and then now that like you said that's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Now that guy's like, fuck a cop. You know what I mean? They put all cops in one boat. And
that happens all the time.
All
And
the
we had-
time.
And I told Chris about this a long time ago, but when I went to my police academy, so for Coast Guard cops, we went to, it's called FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center.
Yeah.
It's down in Glencoe. Bureau of Police goes there, FBI, Capitol Police. They all go to this place. It's
Yeah.
gigantic, right? And in our day, we would start our day with our PT, our defensive tactics, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And that was 2 hours a day of learning how to fight, getting in shape too, but just learning how to fight, beating each other up, 2 hours every single day to start your day. Then we'd hit the bus and go over to the firing range, and we would fire our guns for another 2 hours a day. So that's 4 hours right there. Then we'd hit lunchtime, and then we go for some kind of like schooling training for maybe another hour and a half, 2 hours afterwards. But for a 4 hour block, the majority of our day, we are learning how to injure other people.
Fight and shoot.
And that's it. And the motto at the Defensive Tactics Center at FLETC was violence rules the day. They had in big letters above the beat up room.
For the police.
Yeah.
Law
Violence
enforcement.
rules the day. And of course,
I laugh because it's ridiculous. I mean,
and to ingrain that in you, they show you those films over and over and over again about cops getting killed, getting shot, getting beat up.
to scare you, to make you on a defense.
Because fear, like we're going through right now, fear is a major tool to convince somebody to do something. And so that was my experience at FLETC. So think about how many people have gone through that school who are just brainwashed and they're thinking, I need to kick ass.
Well, that comes back to I've always said to me, from the other guys I've spoken with, is training, reform training, ideas, concepts, de-escalation, all that stuff has to be number one. And they were talking too. I'll get your perspective. Is the hiring process of who they're hiring has a lot to do with personality. Maybe who shouldn't be hired in there, but I know it's hard because we're so far behind as far as number of police officers in Phoenix PD. We're like 1,200 behind, so they need people to work, but you can't be too picky. But we can't be letting people in there with that Napoleon complex or too straight out Afghanistan for 4 tours and they're just ready to go. You know what I mean? I understand, there has to be a better gauge of personality, I guess. I don't know what else, how else to say it. You have probably a way better perspective than I do.
Well, the only, I think you already touched on it, was that it's your hiring pool. It's like who are you going to get to do that job?
Yeah.
The requirements to become a police officer in most places is just a high school diploma.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And a clean record.
Yeah. Sometimes.
It's a little bit more. Yeah, it's a little bit more
Yeah.
difficult to get into the military because you have to have the health assessment part. But
Yeah.
it's the same thing. You just need a high school diploma.
Yeah.
So who who are we really getting? And they have such a shortcoming in their hiring, and they need so many people. You're right. They can't. I mean, beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you got to have people
Yeah.
work, and if you're already understaffed, you just got to have warm bodies.
Yeah.
And that's a
I know.
bad
And that's where you
recipe
really get
for
into trouble for
so,
bad training and
yeah.
everything else.
That verbal judo I was telling you guys about, that was never part of my official police academy training, nor at the station. That's something I found myself because I just recognized
Interesting,
that
yeah.
you just can't beat ass.
I'm gonna bring that up to Jerry next time because
So-
I know he's always looking. I mean, Jerry stays on top stuff pretty well, but he's always looking for new stuff.
Yeah.
Might be something. Hey, you need to maybe check this thing out and implement it into MCSO when
It
you get in there.
changed my entire. No matter what situation I got into, whether it's domestic violence or petty theft, or it
Yeah.
didn't matter. It changed even a traffic stop.
Yeah.
It changed the entire way I went about my
Huh.
career, and everything was so much easier after you just learn how to speak to people. Just know how to speak to people.
So you turn that verbal judo to get away from the real judo.
Oh, yeah.
Having to physically handle somebody.
Yeah.
But no, that's good. That's a good thing, man. I think it's implementing, and I'm sure they're probably trying to certain areas. You know, they're trying to. But I personally don't buy all this social worker stuff going out to domestic calls because domestic calls are like the most violent a lot of times. And you got people mad and amped up, everybody has an ex that you talk to. You get a little teed off at each other, and even way beyond that, you know what I mean? And that send a social worker in there to try to fix that problem is probably not a good thing. Because if it gets physical or anything, what are they going to do?
I responded to 1 million bar fights and I responded to 1 million domestic violence situations, and I will take a bar fight
Yeah.
any day of the week over a domestic violence situation because they are so much hotter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a situation.
That emotional charge
Oh
is so
my
much more.
Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, you get two drunks fighting at a bar, they're probably going to be friends the next day. But
Yeah.
you get a man, and they have to, and they usually go back together after you split them up
Yeah.
and everything has
Yeah.
happened, and then you're responding next weekend. So,
Yeah.
you have to. You can't be a cop can't go into that situation himself hot.
Yeah.
You really at that point
Yeah.
need to know how to speak.
Yeah.
And draw back on your own experiences with your own spouses and
Uh-huh.
girlfriends and understand, there's a reason this guy got mad. Now, what he did probably wasn't appropriate, or what she did probably wasn't appropriate, but you have to understand the nature of those types of calls.
Yeah.
Learn how to talk to
I
people.
could see a social worker accompanying a police officer potentially.
I
but
don't. I
but-
think that's not a terrible idea.
But my problem with that is, I thought, that kind of makes sense, right? But I thought about now, if I'm the cop, I got to worry about not myself now. I got to
Someone
worry
else's
about
safety.
this person now, and the two people that I'm just talking with, and it brings another person into the element that you have to worry about now. So that kind of deters that idea for me,
Well, let me ask you guys this:
Maybe more training,
Do you
just
guys-
flat out more
Do
training.
you guys think domestic violence or just domestic disturbance? Because a lot of times we got domestic disturbance call.
Yeah.
It doesn't always necessarily mean it's
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah.
They could just be throwing, plates
Somebody
at
got
each
mad
other.
and-
Yeah,
and punched a wall
and we
or
get
something.
we get
Yeah.
a call. But do you guys think that like domestic disturbances or disputes between spouses should be handled criminally, or do you think they should be referred to more of a social system type mediation? Because landing a charge for getting in a argument with a woman that you're going to be spending the next 10 years with, I mean, that's how can that be better managed? I don't know. What do you guys
I think it can. For me personally, I don't think it should be a criminal thing unless somebody's beating someone's head in. I think if it's something like that, to me, I would go with I'd lean social. But I'm the conservatarian in me leaning that direction too, because I think what we've been doing doesn't work or hasn't been working. So it's time to do something different.
Well, it's because the laws have got so strict. Literally, Tom could be in a situation where he's at his home and gets locked out from, say, his spouse or girlfriend or whoever. And if he kicks his own door in, it's domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's literally.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
That's a ridiculous
that's where.
law.
But that's where the law is. Here, here's the thing with the social worker thing, because I think you're right in that way. Here's what I'm afraid of, because when I first heard that, I was just thinking, under what circumstance would that work? And I think we're thinking in the terms of America now, right? We're like, that's not gonna work. You send a social worker out there, it's not gonna work. They're gonna, but if we start talking about the model that's just becoming apparent that they're wanting for America, you know where that works? In a social society, when you have social credit. like China has right now. And if you get enough calls to your house, all of a sudden you have this social credit. Oh, he's had this many calls to his house for. Well, you know what? Now he can't board the plane.
Yeah.
Now he can't do this or he can't do that.
We could equate that to criminal.
that-
You know,
But
so
I
if
mean,
you
I was
get-
just about to say, like, kind of what you said is that if you get social workers involved, guess what? That's just another government thing.
Yes, that's
we're
what I was
adding
saying.
on the pile.
That-
Another government thing.
Yeah.
Another way that
And-
we're
and
asking
guys, if we're
government.
helping you.
Yeah, we're asking government to solve
Yeah.
our problems.
Yeah.
I mean, a man and a wife should be solving their own problems, ideally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're asking government to come in and babysit us.
Yeah.
And are we really ready for
that's
that?
what I'm saying. So it's weird. You're right. It's a thing.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
You know?
Absolutely.
it's finding that balance, because that's where it works is when you have social credit. Is because then all of a sudden
I
if she
think-
shows up and we could be in a death match.
Yeah.
But if she shows up, it's like, fuck, I can't catch the plane.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think
you know what I'm saying? Like,
I got to go to Florida next week, man.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
gonna shut up right now.
Exactly. You know,
But
your
you
passport
could
gets
could
snatched
do
or
something, you know, where you know, if it's like, for example, like you said, a call. You get, if there's 3 calls to come to this place and it's the same guy or girl or whatever, then you go, you know what? We're gonna arrest you. On the 3rd call, we're gonna arrest you. We're giving you 3 chances to figure it out.
Yeah.
But if we get it again, whatever happens, we're gonna treat it as a criminal charge at that point. You know, you can have something set up like that, that would provide some deterrent from whatever's happening, you know, or y'all need to just split up and go.
Yeah.
You need to move out or do whatever you got to do, but you're going to get arrested the next time we have to come out here.
Yeah.
You will be arrested for whatever charges can be, you know, charged at the time.
You know,
So-
that was my number one reason for not continuing law enforcement post-military career. Was I thought about what I had been doing for the last 15 years, and I said, can I really be a social babysitter for the next 30 years? Can I really show up on everybody else's worst day and still be normal after that?
Yeah.
Do I really want to jump in somebody else's problems, but that I personally, politically, and philosophically feel they should be solving themselves?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do I want to be that person?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I
Yeah.
let the law enforcement thing go.
Yeah, I completely.
And I
see-
give
completely
cops a
see
lot
where
of
you
credit
make that
for
decision.
staying with that. But
Yeah.
it's a tough life to live.
Yeah, they definitely. I think if the only thing you could potentially do to get better people, quote better people, is require at least an associate's degree, you know, some type of higher level of education, better pay. Because if you're getting paid $40,000 at LAPD to get your, you know, have stuff that goes on there and deal with that every day, it's not even worth it. But if you're getting paid, I'm just making up a number, but if you're getting paid double that, you're getting paid 80. It's, you know, I could do, you know, we all say that, you know, like,
Take a little bit
well,
more
the pay is
care.
good, I could deal with these people, and the
Yeah.
pay is pretty good, you know what I mean? But if you're getting paid crap and you have to put up with crap, then you don't want anything to do with this. So I think if you get a slightly educated person, at least with an associate's, it's typically you're going to have, in general, a more, quote, quality person coming in, increase the pay a little bit. I think you get better people and have less problems potentially with better training, you know, all that kind of together. You know?
And it also, in theory, lends itself to less corruption. You know what I mean? If you're making a little more money,
Yeah.
then you're not gonna probably rob that drug dealer or you know those.
Uh-huh.
I think the best thing I heard this entire time was Jocko Willink. I don't know if you're familiar with Jocko Willink.
Yes.
He's a Navy SEAL. He's made a former Navy SEAL. He's made quite a name of himself as a trainer now. He trains like younger military gentlemen. Did several tours. He's just an all around solid dude. You know what I mean? He said that when he was in, I think Iraq, don't quote me, Iraq or Afghanistan, he said that Petraeus instituted a law that said no more, I guess, drive-by reconnaissance, no more just driving through a town just to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Any town they had to go, they went in, he said we had to get out and talk to people.
Yeah.
And he said at first, across the board, the SEALs were like, they all hated it. I don't want to do this. You know, this
They were
is
scared.
yeah, this
Get
makes
out
no
like that.
sense.
Yeah, it sucks.
We're gonna, you know, it sucks. But he said what happened is that when they started to do it, he started to see that both sides started to humanize each other. He said we humanized them and they humanized us. And he said we had probably 70% less problems.
Yeah.
Just off getting every time our wheels touched any city we had or town, we had to get out, village, whatever, get out. We had to talk to people. He said, and after a while, what he saw was that the people in the town started to say, "Hey man, I can show you where some weapons are."
Yeah.
But we got them because we don't want them here either.
You develop some trust.
Yeah, they're like, we don't. Our weapons aren't for you. We don't want ISIS here either.
Yeah.
We, and he said that that's the biggest thing that he took from this. So he said that he thinks that should be instituted in the police force as well. That people should be getting
Well, that goes
out.
along with another thing that you hear all the time is that the police force should be drawn from within the community. Now, when I lived in Chicago, and then I lived in a town about 45-minute country towns, 45 minutes south of Chicago when I was a kid. And in Chicago, you don't know any of your cops. You see the cruiser roll by, and you have no idea who it is. But when I lived in the small town had 2 cops. And everybody knew who those 2 cops were, and you saw them when they were off duty shopping at the grocery store.
Yeah.
It made their policing job a lot easier because they, like you said, they had human relationships with everybody in the community.
Yeah.
So if there was going to be a problem, every town's going to have their problems. But when he showed up, he didn't show up as an authority figure, so to speak, looking to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
He showed up kind of like a mediator, and he was an officer from within the community. And people already had that rapport that you were talking about. That they would have in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I think that's another concession. And I don't know how Trump could institute that or anything, but he could definitely certainly talk about maybe having more of an
community
effort.
has to start doing that, you know, because it kind of goes back to the beat cop and like New York, the NYPD. You know, Giuliano had the beat cops walking the streets. You know what I mean? Like instead of driving everywhere, they had to beat cop for people from the neighborhoods. You know, they would try to hire from within. You know, so you didn't have some white guy from where I'm from in Indiana down in Brooklyn in a black neighborhood. You know what I mean? You had somebody ideally from New York City, you know, from that area that kind of knows what's going on, knows people, and that's who was walking the streets and talking to people and have that relationship, you know. Yeah. I think there's a lot to that. I'm not saying that a black cop can't be a cop in a white neighborhood or anything like that. I'm saying in general, I think that really helps that people understand they have a better understanding outlook of the culture of the people in that neighborhood.
Yeah, they know who they're policing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I think that's a great example because even with that, with Giuliani, with the stop and frisk thing, it worked. Yeah. It crime went down drastically. Now, where it goes too far, like you said, is with the bad training is as the program continued, then they started going overboard. You know what I mean? It became more than just stop and frisk. It started once Bloomberg came in, especially. It went to let's just start pulling people over randomly. You know what I mean? That's when the whole profiling thing. Yeah, let's just and that's where the training thing comes into play again. Of okay, we're going to do things this way. This is but when violence rules the day, then all of a sudden it goes too far.
And Giuliani, he said that exact same thing. He goes, what Bloomberg should have done is this. You know, it's training people. You don't just go out after. You're not going after people.
Yeah.
You're active. You're active in the community. If you see some, you handle it.
Yeah.
But you're not looking for it.
Yeah.
You're not finding a crime.
Yeah.
Right.
You happen to just see it because you're in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? You're not like. There's a difference between profiling somebody and following somebody. Maybe they're illegal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and we all know, like most illegals that come here don't look like me, right? I mean, or like Tom.
But not in New York.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean.
York,
well, that's true. Yeah. But out here in Arizona, that doesn't mean you pull over somebody because they look Hispanic because you think they might be illegal. That's BS. You know. And God bless Sheriff Joe, but that was a big mistake. and I understand smart police work. There is a little profiling. I guess you could say it's smart police work, right? Because like I remember when I was young, I was like 19 years old, and I was in L.A. My dad, my brother, we were in L.A. I was at my brother was looking to transfer to a JC to play football out there. And he was at Ball State and went out there, and we got lost. And then I saw like Crenshaw Boulevard, and I was like, oh, And my dad gets out to get gas. We ain't seen, you've seen a certain type of person for like the last 10 minutes driving, right? Yeah. So dad gets out, puts gas, a cop pulls up, lady cop, and a black cop and a Hispanic lady cop pull up. You guys lost? We're like, yep. And they're like, get in your car, lock your doors, rope your windows, just follow us out, we'll get you to the freeway.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember distinctly saying, I was laughing because I I told my dad, I go, we just got racial profile, man. Thank goodness, you know. But normally when that happens, it's not a good thing. And you know, it actually turns out very bad for people, and it needs to be controlled.
And almost all police officers from all racial groups have preconceived notions of what they can expect when they show up to a certain area or call. And that actually was illustrated when I was in the police academy, because we had a couple cadets that were African American, and the instructor was talking about racial profiling. He's like, okay, well, here's the question. You're in a college town and you show up to a frat party and there's a bunch of drunken white kids acting like asses. I mean, are you really going to be, how are you going to feel about it? I mean, is it really going to bother you too much, or are you just doing cleanup? Now, you're in a predominantly black neighborhood and you pull over a car that's got 4 black males in it with tinted out windows. Now, how do you feel about approaching that car? And I mean, even the African American cadets were like, well, you know, I mean, I'm going to be, you know. And so it is a part of our natural everyday being, of just who we are and how we prepare ourselves for what we can expect. And it's part of being safe. But you're right. You have to pay attention to it if it's going to be in your psyche.
Well, that all comes down again, like you said, discretion. So you might go in thinking, okay, I got to be very careful with this car because I see 4 people in it. They're black tenant. Well, I'm in a bad neighborhood. You know, it's got rims on it. Yeah, right. You know, they're bumping music from Biggie or whatever, and you're like, I'm approaching this car. I don't know what's going on in here. And you know, and you're being very careful and safe, but then you realize, oh, it's just some young kids just out screwing around. You know what I mean? But a lot of times that doesn't happen. Yeah. You know, a lot of times that doesn't happen. They overstep their boundaries. You know, and that's what the people are mad about. It makes me mad. You know what I mean? So
and sometimes I think that overstepping their boundaries and that over aggressive behavior is not only just because it's training, but again, it's a fear. They're scared. They're really scared. They just don't want to get shot.
Both sides.
Yeah, both sides. Absolutely.
You got to remember, the people in the car are afraid too.
And again, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's a conversation.
But that's that relationship though.
Yeah.
That's that relationship that's not at a younger age too. They try to get cops out of schools, and I'm like, that's the dumbest thing you could ever do. And the Democrats are like, get cops out of schools. I'm like, that's where you build that relationship at a young age. So cops aren't bad people. They're just like your dad, except they wear a uniform. That's their job. You know, they shop at grocery stores. They go pick up milk for their wife or whatever. You know. So if you don't establish these relationships in school at a young age, they're going to grow up to fear and hear the fear and be scared of cops and make maybe a potential bad situation when they're in high school or whatever.
Well, when you're talking about like the over aggressive situations, it's usually not a race thing. It's a socioeconomic thing. It's the poor neighborhoods, because it's the same way in a trailer park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is.
And so, like, what I always tell people when I have a conversation is, you know, there's perception and there's reality. Perception is, you know what, everything should just be equal all the way across the board. But in reality, it's not. So if you live in one of those neighborhoods, I've actually had this conversation at the barbershop, because the barbershop I get my haircut in, it's in the hood. You know what I mean? And so when we've had these conversations, and I tell them, bro, you're better off just overdoing it.
Yeah.
You're better off just saying, because I do it. Yeah. When I get pulled over, I say, hey, listen, man, I'm about to reach in my glove compartment. I don't do it before. I don't do it when, you know, as he's walking up. I don't go and start. I put my hands on it. I say, hey, listen, I'm about to reach in my glove compartment and get my registration and my license, okay? I walk him through it. You know what I mean? I'm going to make him feel safe, because, you know, but what happens is like you said, you have the cop who's like, he's antsy, and then you have the person in the car that's like, fuck him, man. You know what I mean? I'm sick of this shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just a fucking recipe for disaster, and it's just a never-ending cycle. You know what I mean? That just keeps playing itself. So that's what I always tell people: just overdo it, man. Just swallow your pride and overdo it. I always think of it this way. They're called the authorities for a reason. You know what I mean? Even though I know what you're saying, they don't have to be authoritarian, but they're called the authorities for a reason. So when in that situation, I'm not the person in control. Yeah. The only way I can be in control is to relent. Yeah. And if I can relent and say, hey, listen, I'm going to make you feel safe. I'm going to get that out of there. I'm just letting you know. And then, you know, I just think that's ultimately is, you know, just acquiesce a little bit.
Well, it's a respect thing, too. Yeah. You know, if you
give
respect, you get respect.
That's right.
And it's education, too. In schools, kids need to be taught about the social contract that we have in this country, where a group of people delegates power temporarily to a certain group of people to keep order
Right.
and law in the community. And it's like I said, that's the social contract. A lot of kids aren't taught about social contract. And
No, it's true. I don't think
they don't recognize that.
I don't think I've ever heard about that until like I was well out of school. Honestly, like they don't talk about it. That's what I mean. This stuff needs.
And it should be taught in every civics class.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem too. Is unless you're Professor Hussey,
yeah, right.
you know what I mean.
My class.
You know, unless you're in his history class, you're not learning anything with civics. You know,
That's
so.
right.
That's one thing that I really want back in schools. But well, hey, thank you guys for coming. Back to finish off another People Over Politics. We'll be back next week. Yeah, Hussey, you're welcome back anytime.
I had fun tonight.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you guys.
come back and we just hit the key issues of the day. So we will see you guys next week.